Our first question is very simple. It's just a brief introduction. So your name, an intro to CAP, and a recent project that you guys worked on.
Okay, so my name is Michèle Andrews, and I am the executive director and co-founder of doornumber1.org, which is a not-for-profit. We're in the process of getting charitable status in Canada, and we started the Climate Action Accelerator program in, I guess, late 2021. And really the goal of that project is to have schools, to help schools work together to pool their knowledge and expertise, but also to encourage one another to, and for us to set some ideas about whole school, high impact, hope-filled climate action in schools, and really what the potential could be for school communities to really take this on as a project together. So I could say much more about that, but why don't you ask me some questions about it?
And our second question is very straightforward. What motivated you to pursue this line of work? So in environmental activism and also in working with schools.
Okay, well, so I feel like I've been kind of a nature-connected person my whole life. I'm in my 50s now, so I have grown children, and they would have been eating organic food, and we had cloth diapers and whatever back when it was more of a sort of a fringe thing to be doing. So I've always had a bit of a connection. I've always loved to garden, and I loved animals and nature and camping. I did a lot of camping as a kid, so there was lots of connections that way. And then I guess, and I was the head of school for 10 years at the Toronto Waldorf School, which is a pre-kindergarten to grade 12 school in the Toronto area. But Waldorf education has really intrinsically a connection to nature. And so I had chosen this sometimes called an alternative approach to education for my children. And then I was the head of school there for 10 years myself. And that allowed me, so all my kids have had a Waldorf education, which was just, I think it's such a lovely way to, if you can have the opportunity, it's such a lovely way for people to learn to connect from a young age with the world and the earth and each other. And then when I left that, I realized that this climate crisis was getting worse. And my idea before that was that we have smart people working in good faith and they'll solve this problem. And I would say that I kind of woke up to the fact that it wasn't getting solved and that I might be able to help work on solutions to it. And as I was making this career change, I thought I really want to find a way to be part of this solution. And because I had this experience in schools and also this connection to nature, I went and did a couple of training programs. I did the Al Gore Climate Reality Leadership Corps, which is open to youth as well as adults. And then I did something called the Living Future Accreditation, which is through the International Living Future Institute. And both of those gave me sort of more detailed training, I guess I would say, to help me launch into this career. And then, and I had this idea that I thought that schools could really make a difference. And so in talking to people, I just, I talked more and more with different people about this idea, and they all thought, yeah, this sounds great, but it felt like they needed somebody to help them get started. And so I started it.
Okay, that's great. We're also wondering, and more towards your line of work, and of course, knowing that like education involves a lot of people, what are some challenges perhaps you faced in this process, and how did you overcome this issue or still in the process of overcoming it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm still overcoming is this idea that I think others should be doing something. So I feel like, for example, there's all these wonderful conferences in education and that focus on sort of leading practices in elementary and secondary schools. And I'm thinking they should talk more about climate at these conferences. And I've been trying to get people to take it on. So I give people suggestions of great speakers. I give people workshop ideas. I give people, and I feel like they're not taking it sometimes as seriously as I think they should be taking it. And, I had this epiphany just this March, and I went, why don't I just host a conference? We've got this organization. We've got all these people around the country interested. Let's just do our own conference. So we're going to do our own conference, and I'm in the early stages of that. But I think that's one thing is just go for it. If you see what needs to be done, don't ask for others to do it. I mean, don't reinvent things. If there are groups you can join with, absolutely do that. But sometimes you just got to go for it. And so yeah, I'm still in my 50s, recognizing that I could just go for things and make things happen. And you too obviously know that because of the work that you've done to start this organization you started. But I just think so. Yeah, don't wait for others, just get going. But I would also say that in this environmental movement, we do need to find people that are also working with us. So I collaborate all the time with all kinds of people that really help. And everybody seems really interested in collaborating when they find one another. And so I've also just been kind of cold calling people to say, hey, I'm doing this work. It looks like you're doing interesting work. Would you work with me on this? And I'm always being told yes. It always happens. So
we're curious because you talk about environmental movements and conferences as a whole and kind of a holistic route. So do you think there's one or two focal points of discussion that both of these entities should be focused on with regards to the environmental movement?
That's a good question. I feel like I think the thing is to recognize where you have influence and where you have skills and where you have interest, and then just make it happen in that section, in that sort of sphere of influence. So, whether you're, they say that when you look for jobs in climate, say, or in environment, honestly, every job in every sector, in every part of every company, in every not-for-profit, in every government, every job needs to be taking a lens of the climate crisis and how that job can contribute to the future of a better world. And so I don't actually think we need to, the fact that it's a movement is a thing, but I think what it needs to be is become mainstream, and that everybody needs to be thinking about whether they're a computer programmer or they're an artist or they're a teacher or they're, a finance person, whatever they do, everything that you're going to do, everything you're going to want to study, everything you're going to want to follow in your career path, there will be an angle to make that a climate focused path. And so I would almost wish that we didn't have the movement as a movement. We would just have it as part of our lives every day. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. It seems like all of these environmental movements are like a great approach to see things and also just being incorporated in our everyday lives. We're also wondering perhaps what's a highlight or favorite memory on a project you work on so far?
Oh, well, honestly, so a couple of weeks ago, we had all of our schools present what they've done so far in the first, whether it was just this school year or this school year and the previous school year, in the Climate Action Accelerator program, and just seeing how every school, so we have about 20 schools that are now in our program, and how every school has taken it on quite differently, and yet they have students working with facility leaders, working with administration, working with teachers, and just to see these teams at schools working on this together. They're writing plans, they're taking initiatives, they're stretching. You can see that they're all talking now about hope and regeneration. So that highlight was just seeing all of that start to really take hold is really exciting. And then visiting schools, I get to visit lots of these schools, and I was at Southridge about a year and a bit ago, but just to be able to see what's happening on the ground and see the momentum and the enthusiasm, I think that is something that really is helpful, is when people find community in this work. And I see the communities building in the schools, and I see that there are connections being made school to school, and just all of that makes me really excited and hopeful for the future.
Because like most of the schools you work with, they have a lot of students that both staff and teachers are trying to actively get into the environmental movement. So is there any advice that you would have for student activists in particular who are passionate about things like the environment?
Advice for them to help get their peers involved, you mean? Or
Yeah, or just for themselves to pursue this line of work.
yeah, I mean, I think self-care is a really important part of being an activist. And by that I just mean, you can't do this 24/7. You've got to take some time for yourself. You've got to take some time off. And you see a lot of burnout in youth activists and activists generally, because it can be really disheartening, hard work. So I think finding fun and joy and building community together and having times where you're not meeting to talk about whatever it is you're trying to solve, but you're having a picnic together, you're going for a walk, you're going for a hike, you're playing music together, whatever it is. I think self-care is a really important part of the activist work. And do keep it fun and try. I think people are more attracted to hope and possibility than they are to fear and worry about the future. And so I'm not trying to say in any way that we shouldn't all be concerned about the future and what's the trajectory that we're on. But I also think, I don't know if you know the book Hope Matters and the work of Ellen
Yes.
Kelsey. So I would highly, highly recommend that you try to help each other talk about the hopeful things you're seeing happen and not just about the things that you're seeing not go so well, because I think that can really make a difference. And Ellen Kelsey has really recently created a partnership with an influencer, a social media influencer who goes by the handle Queer Brown Vegan. I would encourage you to check that out. I think he's got a YouTube channel. There's a video that they've done. It's about half an hour long. And then if I follow him on Instagram, you guys could too. And I think and following the Ellen Kelsey and this idea of hope, I think those would be some recommendations I would have for both attracting people to what it is you're trying to accomplish in a way that does inspire people and give people hope, and doesn't just, because sometimes fear is just such a demotivator, honestly. It just makes you freeze and want to not get out of bed in the morning. And that's real. And we all face that from time to time, but having ways to help each other through that isn't there. I think that's really important.
Okay, great. Speaking of hope and community, I'm also thinking what's something you would like to do in the future and any future plans, perhaps in activism and expanding your initiative.
Yeah, well, I do hope that we can expand into public schools. Right now, we're working in kind of our pilot phase, we're working with independent schools, but I'm really hoping that, excuse my alerts there. I'm really hoping that public schools become part of our program going forward. So I'm really hoping we can expand. And then we're hosting this conference next April. And that's an idea of building community in person. And it's going to be in Ontario. I'm sorry, Anya. So maybe people fly to it, or maybe people Zoom in. We haven't, anybody will be welcome to come in person, but we hope to do it in the West in the year following. So we'll maybe go east and west, and that hopefully that'll be for anybody that wants to be part of this. It'll be for schools working on climate action, including students. So this won't be a professional conference for adults. This is going to be just like our CAP teams. It'll be students, facilities, teachers, administrators, parents, I don't care who, everybody that is interested in the topic to come together. So I'm pretty excited about that conference, and more will be coming out about that. But of course, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have representation from your organization at it, whether virtually or in person.
This might be a weird question to branch off a really wonderful promotion for the CAP conference, but if you were to market or introduce the climate crisis to someone who knows nothing about it, and you had one sentence to do so, what would you say?
Well, I actually think I would start with a question. And I think my question would be, what do you love most in the world? And I think whether they would say their baby brother, or whether they would say, the sunflowers blooming, or the river, or my mom, or my grandma, or whatever it would be, I think there would be a way to start a conversation with somebody about the potential for the climate crisis if we don't all work together to have an impact on whatever it is that they love. And so I think it's not about beliefs. It's not about statistics. It's not about science. You can get to that if they want that. But I think it's about finding common ground for, we can all agree that we love this park. We love, you know, children. We love the birds singing. And I think that's the way to start into the conversation. I know an activist that's been working for a long time. His name is Jason McLennan. And he's an architect and a designer and a really amazing man. And he speaks all over the world. And he says it's all about love. He says that we have to find ways to be in community with each other and agree on what we love and agree to work on saving what we love together.
Okay, on that powerful note, that's all the questions we had for today. Thank you so much for talking to us on an early Monday morning. So, Enya, do you want to add something?
No, it's been great hearing your insights, and I'm glad to have met you virtually still, but on a different platform from CAP.
Yeah, I'm really glad to meet you too, and I'm hoping you'll stay in that CAP team for a couple more years. And yeah, thank you both. Very nice to meet you, Meredith, as well. And just best of luck in your work. And reach out again if you have any questions or ideas for this conference coming up and how to connect people across Canada if you can't all fly here, which I know has an environmental impact for sure. So I would love to stay in touch.